Hello, everybody, and welcome to this month's training. We're going to be talking about painting challenges today and how to set yourself up for success in a painting challenge. And go through some of the steps of things I think that are important for you to do to prep before we dive into the painting challenge next week. So, as I hope all of y'all know, it's September. It's challenge time. And this year, we're only doing the challenge here in the group. So that means it's not open to people unless they are here in the membership. Hey, Sally. So let me get the chat roll open so I can see there you are. So it's only open to the members. Now, to get the maximum advantage from the challenge, I've got a couple of different recommendations for you, but I want to start off talking about why you want to do the challenge to begin with. So about a week ago, I asked everybody in the group, in the membership, what's something you've always wanted to paint but haven't? It's something you've always wanted to dive into but haven't. And y'all gave me a great list, running list that goes on for quite a ways. There were a lot of great responses here. I want y'all to all go back and look at that one too. I'm going to repost the link to that. But over and over again, there were things that y'all had not ever tried to paint before. Well, one of the ways to get yourself set up so that you're not worried about whether it's good or it's bad or it's great or whatever with approaching a new subject is to do a small daily painting challenge around it. So I would suggest right off the bat that everybody go back and look at what you posted into that thread. What were your answers when I said, what do you love to paint that you've never painted before? Like Tracy was talking about a tiger. So an exotic animal that you've never had a chance to paint before. Beverly's talking about a portrait of her grandchildren. Virginia is talking about some of the landscapes of the Hudson Valley, a big painting of that. That's a little veering off a little bit, but you can definitely go large, go back to last month's training. But think about approaching a subject that you haven't approached before, but that you would really like to. And let's take some of the scare, fear factor away by doing a challenge around it. So if you're not sure of what to paint for the challenge, here's the first thing that I would think about is looking at what your answer was to that question. Second thing I would think about is setting a goal for yourself in the challenge. Those two things are really closely related. So what do you want to accomplish by doing a daily painting challenge? What do you want to get done? What do you want to have happen by the end of the week? So if we start on the 16th, which is next Monday, and run through Friday, no worries if you can't start on Monday. You can always start later. The videos will stay in here. But if you start on Monday, where do you want to be by the time you get to Friday? What is the thing that you want to have change between Monday and Friday? And make sure it's doable. So an example or an analogy would be, if you're going to start weightlifting, you don't go into the gym and put 600 pounds on the barbell and then think you're going to lift it without giving yourself a hernia. So don't try to make a huge change between Monday and Friday, but give yourself a goal so that you've got something to shoot for and something that you can evaluate when you get to the end of the week, and think about where you need to make some adjustments or changes. So pick a subject that you haven't really approached before. That's a really great challenge and a really great why. And then think about specifically what you hope to accomplish during the challenge. That'll give you some drive behind what you're doing and make it easier to set that timer and dive in there and get going on the paintings. That's the first up. Second thing is I want to talk a little bit about picking subjects. And I see people all too often just kind of freezing when it gets to, what do I paint during the challenge? And the truth of the matter is, it really doesn't matter what you paint. Pick the subject of something that you haven't painted before, if that's what you want to do. But if you're really struggling, pick a subject that is something really familiar that's around you. Pick the backyard angle that you look at out of your window every day. Pick 5 different arrangements of pears. Pick 5 different views of your garden. Pick the same landscape at 5 different times of day. But focus on one thing, and it will help eliminate the confusion in choosing. What I would not do is, I'm going to paint a portrait today. Tomorrow, I'm going to do a still life. Wednesday, I'm going to do a landscape. Thursday, I'm going to do an animal. And Friday, I'm going to do an abstract. Because you're not building any momentum there around becoming more familiar with the subject. So to maximize your experience, pick 5 of the same general thing, not all different topics. So resist that temptation to go wide and instead go deep into one subject. Once you've decided what you're going to paint, then I would batch your photos. Unless you're going to work from real life, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. I love painting from life. It's my absolute favorite. But if you want to set yourself up for ease, then you might want to work from photos. And there's some tricks to doing that I want to go over with you really quickly here. And a lot of this you can do ahead of time on your phone. It doesn't have to be on Photoshop or on the computer. But you want to batch your prep as much as you can so that as you go into the challenge, you're not having to think about, what am I going to paint tomorrow? What am I going to paint after that? When I've done daily painting projects, I don't pick the subject that I'm going to paint the next day, the night before. I do that in big batches. So what I mean by that is, I'm going to share the screen here. We're going to go into Photoshop. And I'm going to pull in just a couple. I think I already have them on here. Oops, I only have one in there. Let me get some of the others. I'm working on a series from the old rice fields that are near here in Savannah. So I am fascinated by the old rice fields that are part of the Savannah Wildlife Refuge. So what I would do for that, and I've got a couple of them I've already pulled up to work with, so I want to grab those. Some of them I've already painted plein air. Get to the exact ones so I can show you what I mean by cropping them. Here we go. So if we just look at this one for a minute, this is one of them. There are a multitude of ways. This is the photo straight out of my phone without any alterations or filters. So before I get started, one of the things that I will do, and you can do it in your phone by editing the photo, making a copy and edit. Always make a copy before you edit. One of the things I would do is crop it to improve the composition. So don't just paint the photos straight out of the phone without thinking about what's going to make a stronger composition. And if you look at this one, your head kind of leans a little to the left because it's not a very balanced photo. And so I would think about how you would crop it to improve the composition, and perhaps even crop it to better fit whatever proportion it is that you're working with. So you can drag those handlebars and say, I'm working on squares right now, so I could pull that in until I get a better, more square format, and then crop the image. Look at the difference that makes in the composition there between that and the uncropped version. Much stronger composition. And then you're just going to do File Save As, and I save them into a folder. You saw just a second ago a folder. I have a folder for rice field photos so that I've got those all ready to go if I'm going to paint in the studio and not plein air. I'm trying to do as many of those out there in the fields as I can, but sometimes the weather doesn't permit. Then you have the original photos still saved. You can go back and make another composition. That's not the only one that would work from that. I can go back to the rectangle, and I can think about including less land in there and come up with a whole different composition. I can really emphasize the sky and make it more of a rectangle, maybe something that's closer to like a 16 by 20. By pulling that down and editing it a little bit. So there I automatically have a whole different version of it. But I save those all into a folder so that it's so much easier to get started. When I'm ready to go that day to do a quick painting, a daily painting, I pull it up onto the computer and work from it small. So that's another recommendation I have when you're working from photos. Make sure it's on the computer. Don't print them out. And the reason for that is that the screen of the computer is more luminous than a printout. And it's going to more accurately duplicate what your eyeball saw. When you print it out, the colors run together. And then it's not as visually interesting. So work from your computer monitor or your iPad. You can even work from your cell phone because you don't need it big to paint. You actually do better when it's small. So that second recommendation is to pick, besides picking the subject, is to then batch your photos. Go ahead and crop them. Even better, get your sketchbook out and do your thumbnails ahead of time so that you can just dive in. If you've done some sketches ahead of time, you're already familiar with that composition and where the value relationships are. And it makes it so much easier to dive in and paint because you've already done all the heavy lifting of figuring out the value relationships. So that's how I use Photoshop, but you can use your phone to edit. If you're on your iPad, you can use the photo app on there to edit. Any of those will work. If you're on one of those smart devices, now I don't have a Droid, so I can't answer to that. But if you're on your smart device and in the Photos app, and I'm going to just grab a photo, sunset after the hurricane. So if you're on your photo, I'm going to quit screen sharing here for a minute so that you can see it. So do you see, let me see if I can turn it so you can see the text. Right up here in the corner, I hate the glare, it's not going to show. Right up here in the upper right hand corner it says edit. When you click the edit button, then you can crop. Crop is the second option in. So you have a chance to really make some changes to that photo. Just make sure you're doing it to a copy. Let's say done or cancel. Get it to go away. So do all that cropping ahead of time. Don't think that you're going to be able to crop it in your head when you paint. That's when I make big mistakes. Is when I think I can do it in my head. None of us can. So don't do that. Then the third recommendation that I have, kind of almost the fourth, is to think about if you're picking subjects that are similar, your colors are going to be in a similar color family. So if you mix your paint ahead of time, like I always tell people to do, you're going to be able to carry that paint over from day to day. And you're not going to have to spend as much time mixing your colors. So it's going to be that much faster to paint. Fifth thing to think about, use your biggest brush or knife to get started so that you're blocking in the big shapes during the time that you've got. I really recommend that you do like 20 to 40-minute paintings so that you're not expending too much time on them and making them too precious. You can get a lot done in 20 minutes. Y'all know I preach that a good bit. But set your timer for 20 minutes. If you run over to 40, no problem. But understand that if you do that, and if you have that short period of time to work in, you're going to let go of your need to be finicky and then add a lot of extraneous details in there. So think about using that 20 to 40-minute time period to really jumpstart what you're working on there. So other things to think about as far as batching goes, because batching applies to more than just the photos. Batching also applies to prepping the panels or whatever it is that you're going to paint on. I love using Arches oil paper for painting in oils for those daily paintings because it comes in a pad. I think I've got one right back there. It comes in a pad. It also comes in sheets, and you can cut it to whatever size you want to work with. I'd keep the size the same just because that makes it so much easier to get into the rhythm and the habit of the painting process. Don't make them really huge. Also, don't make them so tiny that you feel like you're tightened in and bound by the scale and the size. But batch the prep on that. If you are prepping canvases or prepping panels, like you need to gesso some things, or you need to tone the ground on your gesso boards or on your oil paper or on watercolor paper that's gessoed, that works well as well. Then do that ahead of time so that you're not trying to do it during the week of the challenge. Start working on that stuff now so that when Monday comes, you can just dive in. So to take away the preciousness of what you're working on, some surfaces that I'd recommend. One is the oil paper. It's a lot less expensive than a canvas or a prepped panel. And again, it can be cut to whatever size and then taped onto a piece of foam core board so that you can paint with ease. Second thing that works really well, it's also not real expensive, is a piece of watercolor or heavy drawing paper. I like to use Stonehenge, which is a printmaking drawing paper. Take that paper and gesso it. So if you seal it with like a coat of gel medium and then you put 2 coats of gesso on top of it, the oil is not going to go through it. And it will be impervious to the oil. And you can paint on that paper with oils without having to go buy oil paper. It also works beautifully for painting with acrylics on it. So think about getting either a sheet of watercolor paper and I would get the 140-pound weight, 100-pound weight, not the 300-pound weight for that. That's expensive. Or Stonehenge and gesso it. Remember, you want to seal it with the acrylic first and then gesso it before you paint on it if you're using it for oils. If you're using it for watercolor or for acrylics, you can just dive right in. If you want the paint to sit up on top, then gesso it first. So that's oil paper, watercolor drawing paper that's prepped. Third surface that's really not as expensive is unstretched but gessoed canvas. So you can buy that by the yard at any art supply store or online at places like Jerry's and Dick Blick. So they sell canvas by the yard that already has the gesso on there. And just like the paper, you can cut it to the exact size you want. So I have a whole stack of gessoed canvas that I cut so that once it's taped down, it's going to be about that 5 by 7 inch size, and it'll fit beautifully into my panel carrier, and I can use it when I'm out plein air painting. So those are 3 that are not expensive. And if there's less price involved, but it's still a good quality material, you're going to be less uptight about using it and more successful in the paintings. If they're really expensive panels, really expensive linen, you're going to freeze at the idea of wasting that surface. What I don't want you to do is go get those El Cheapo artist panels that are about $1 a piece. Those are not good. They have a really nasty surface to them. They're really porous, and you have to gesso them before you can really use them. So if you want to save money and you want to take away the preciousness of it, use the Arches oil paper, use gessoed watercolor paper, drawing paper, or use the pre-gessoed canvas that you cut to size, so that you just don't worry about whether an individual one of those paintings is any good or not. They're all going to be better than you think they are. Guarantee you that. I also want to add in before I forget, don't throw any of these away. So as you're painting, on day 1, people usually do pretty well. Day 2, they can struggle a little bit. Day 3, it's a giant pita and people want to quit, because anytime you're starting to build a new habit, or anytime you challenge yourself with something, you hit that wall at about day 3. Don't throw those paintings away. There is always something you can do with them. And remember that we have a Q&A critique the following week, and we can look at those and see what you might want to do to develop another painting from them, or to take those to the next stage. But don't throw them away. Please promise me you won't do that. It helps so much to be able to see them in succession as a group and to see what you're doing with them. So resist the temptation to throw them away. Keep them all together. Even if you have to get on the struggle bus with 1 or 2 of them, that's okay. Don't beat yourself up about that. That kind of stuff happens. So if you've got all of that prep work done, you've got your paints out. Keep it simple. Use those big tools. You'll be ready to dive in on Monday and just paint with ease and paint in flow. Remember, there's no time limit on it as far as when you get started. Can't start Monday, start Wednesday, Friday, or the following week. You can do it at any time. It's just really helpful when we all do it as a group, because it helps to spur each other on. So a couple of things that I think will help get people motivated. First thing is, here's where I want you to think about some of the other challenges that we've done. Think about the Instagram challenge, social media. Wouldn't it be cool if you posted about what you were doing on your Instagram social media channel? So if you post the painting after you paint it each day for accountability is one reason to do it. But another is, people love seeing works in progress. You don't have to say that they're finished, because they may not be. But you can talk about what you're doing, the challenge you're giving yourself, and why you're doing it. It's a great way to begin to build engagement on your Instagram channel. Use the Artwork Living hashtag. And I'm going to show y'all how to do the hashtag again for those who haven't done it in a while, just to make sure. And if you do that, then all the rest of us can follow what you're doing and come over and comment. And if we comment on each other's posts, guess what happens? You get more reach and more engagement, and you'll get more followers. So don't feel like you have to follow each other, because you don't. But I think it's really supportive if people follow each other in the group whose work they find interesting. So think about doing that. Think about weaving in social media to the challenge as a way to up the ante a little bit, to get a stronger social media presence. If you're painting 5 days in a row, you're going to have 5 small paintings that you can share. You can share just an image of your palette one day. Doesn't have to be the painting. You can share an image, a little quick selfie video of you mixing your paint. Think about all the different possibilities there. And you don't have to share them as they happen. You can save some of those for the following week. But I really want y'all to think about taking advantage of using the challenge, the painting challenge, to get back in there on Instagram and re-engage that audience in case you've slacked off just a little bit, which I think all of us do at one time or another. So just to quickly go over how to do that hashtag again. Share the screen, go back over to Chrome. And get to Instagram. So if I go to my page. I'm going to add the hashtag to one of my posts that's already up here. So I'll add it to this one. And the hashtag that we're going to use, and it'll be in the notes for the challenge. The hashtag that we've got is art, work, living. And it'll pop up. You can either use the Artwork Living Challenge or the Artwork Living. I think the challenge has more posts on it, so go with that one. And then just click post. But you'll get suggestions as soon as you start typing it in. So either use Artwork Living or Artwork Living Challenge. And that will make all of those posts discoverable, so that if we go into search, oops, I do need to put hashtag in there. They'll pop up. And most of those are going to be mine because that's the hashtag I use when I am making regular posts. But you can see the work that has been tagged with our hashtags. You'll see more of the challenge ones right here. So then you'll be able to go back and comment on people's paintings and take a look at what people are working on. These are from the last ones from the free group. So that's all you have to do to add an Instagram tag, a hashtag, and it can go in the original post. I just can't show you that on the desktop because Instagram does not let you post from the desktop. So that is all you have to do to add some hashtags in there. Let me pop over here and check on questions. Also make sure I didn't have anything else I wanted to add in there. I think those were the main points I wanted to get across, that you really think about batching ahead of time, getting yourself set up so that you're not having to think about what I'm going to paint, what size I'm going to paint, what am I going to paint on, any of those things on Monday. You've made all of those decisions this week. And then on Monday, you just dive right on in and you'll have way more fun. So I'm going to prompt and ask y'all in the group what your goal is for the challenge, because I want you to share your why. What is it that you want to have accomplished? Do you want to paint looser, a little bit looser? Do you want to paint a different subject you haven't tried before? Do you want to try a different medium that you haven't tried before? That's another good goal for your challenge. But think about what you want to have as the goal and share that in the group. So, Sally says, if I want to do interiors, do I paint from a photo? I can't really drag my art stuff into the living room or dining room. Well, you could. You sure could. I've definitely done that before. But then you do have to protect the surfaces if you do that. So what you might want to do is take some good photographs, Sally. But if you take those photos of the interiors, one of the things that's going to be really crucial is that you have good lighting. And so I would take them either in the early morning or late afternoon, depending on what side of the house they're on, and emphasize the natural light rather than the artificial light. Use the natural light coming in the windows and you'll get more interesting compositions. So I would take photos, but I'd be very, very aware of the lighting if you're going to do that. And if you have any doubts about it, share them into the group and we'll take a look. Then Sally says, when you're setting up your easel, should your subject be on your left if you're right-handed? I think that's all a matter of personal preference. I have seen people discuss that and kind of argue about it many times. I tend to set mine up so that the subject is to my right, and I'm right-handed because I tend to look over there and then look back. That's just what I've gotten used to doing. And then it's closer to the panels, so I'm not looking over my arm to look over there. But that just is what have developed as my habit. I truly don't think it matters. I think do what feels comfortable to you. Now, what you don't want to be doing is turning your palette and your easel so that you're at a right angle to the subject. That's a mistake, because then you're not looking directly at it. So I'm usually looking right at it, just slightly to the left or the right of it. So I'm not angling it over to the side. I'm looking right at it, and there's just a slight angle, if anything, at it. A lot of times I'm looking straight at it, over the top of my easel. So I'm not a big fan of the turn it far to the right, because you end up doing a whole lot of this back and forth. And actually what ends up happening is people quit looking, and they just look at their painting, because our eyeballs tend to go straight in front. So that's another reason why I don't like the too far to the side part. With interiors, Sally says, how does one decide what to leave out? I have a lot of stuff that boggles my mind. The same way as you do with anything else. You want to simplify. So let me see if I know I have a stock photo that's an interior. And let me see if I can pull that in. And just a reminder, when you make a comment into the chat roll, I said this earlier in the earlier Q&As, and I forgot to do it this one. Make sure the little blue bubble says all panelists and attendees, so that everybody can see all the comments. Zoom is now defaulting to where it just goes so I can see it, and I think that's not as helpful for everybody else. Let me see if I have that stock photo of an interior. Pretty sure I downloaded one not too long ago. Certainly I can grab one really fast. I say that there's no such thing as fast when you're looking for something. Invariably, when you're looking for something, you can't find it fast. Too many other things that I've downloaded in there. I'm going to grab one off of Shutterstock instead, so that I can, one that I've already paid for. Hang tight for just a second, Sally, and I'm going to show you what I mean. So let me look at ones that I've already got. Okay, here is one. Not my favorite photo, but it'll work. And I'll pull it into Photoshop. And then I can show you what I mean. And let me share the screen again. So you simplify an interior the same way that you do anything else. You want to zoom in tighter. And so my advice on interiors, especially if you tend to get lost in the details, is to zoom in a whole lot more than you would otherwise. Remember when you were really beginning to explore the landscape a whole lot more methodically, you zoomed in really tight, and then you started gradually zooming back out again. So I would probably, let's just think about, not that dead tree over there, something like, actually kind of like the light falling on that floor right there. So I'm going to adjust the selection and make it smaller. So if I was doing a square, I might do something like that. And when you crop in, you eliminate a lot of the other stuff in the mess. So you want to make it as simple and clean as you can. Don't have lots of the tchotchke stuff in there. Like if you got a lot of doodads, don't put them in there. Keep it super simple. And what makes that one interesting is that light falling across the floor and how close all the hues are to each other. So it becomes a really subtle, almost tonalist composition. So that's what I would do. If you're going to do interiors, notice that this one also has really strong light coming in from outside. Think about shooting some photos either in the early morning or late afternoon, depending on where the light's going to be coming in. And then edit them in your phone so that they're small close-up details so that you're not getting too many things going on. Sally says, do you gesso the oil paper? No, you don't. Oil paper is ready to go. It already has a resin embedded in it so that you don't have to do any gessoing. You just tear a sheet off, cut it to size, and go. Yeah, I figured that y'all had kind of slacked off on that, Sarah, on the Instagram posting. All of us have a tendency to do that. If you're not being prompted, you're not going to do it. So I really want y'all to think about making that part of the challenge for yourself. Almost all of y'all have done the daily painting challenge before. So it's not an overwhelming challenge. But if you fold in that Instagram part of it too, you're going to get double bang for your buck. So I think that's a great thing to do. Sally, I think you can find some free photos of interiors if you look on some of those free photo websites, and then you can pick through them. But I'm going to be honest, I don't think that's a great idea. You paint, all of us paint more authentically and with more heart when we have a connection to the subject we're painting. So I would take photos of your own interiors. I would think about simplifying it even more. I would think about making some still lives on a table in your interior and do that, but keep it really, really simple. Because if you're painting from somebody else's photograph of somebody else's house that you don't have any connection to, the lack of connection comes through in the painting. So I have a real strong feeling about that. I see it all too often that people paint from other people's photos and they're just kind of dead. So I wouldn't do that. You can use watercolor if you want to, and just use watercolor paper, and then you can go straight onto the paper. So that would be fine as well. Tracy says, keeping the colors similar is a good idea. It really helps a lot. In previous challenges, I found I didn't really have time to clean up the palette. By the end of the week, I was in a right mess. I'm thinking of doing some more sea boat paintings. I think that's a good idea. So what I do, Tracy, is, and I can't remember who asked me that. It was one of my students in the Painter's Path asked me yesterday about how I clean off my plein air palette. And my answer was, I don't. So the paint stays on there until it's dried out, and then I scrape it off. But and especially with my Open Box M, I mix paint directly on the wood. The only reason I've got a piece of plexi in my day tripper is because Joshua Bean sent me the plexi, even though I said I didn't want it. I like to mix straight on the wood. I don't clean it off at the end of the day. So if you're painting every day and you close the box back up with oils, it's going to still be fairly fresh the next day. And you won't need to mix as much paint. You can keep the paint from drying out as quickly with oils if you take 2 to 3 drops of clove oil and put it on the pad of a Band-Aid, and then make that into a loop and stick it down into the palette box. Don't let the clove oil touch the paint because then it'll never dry. But if it's on that pad of the Band-Aid, or as Sheila has done, Sheila Walsh, if you get one of those little felt pads that goes on the foot of a chair, you know, that has a sticky on the back, you can get those in the grocery store. That felt pad can go in your panel box. palette box, and you can put a couple of drops of clove oil on that pad, and that'll keep it from drying out. The colors that dry the fastest are the earth tones. The primary colors don't dry as quickly. They'll stay fresh all week long, especially if you're working with them. So if they're all if the subjects are related, the chances are pretty good the colors are going to be related, and you only need to mix a couple of colors every day. So that helps a lot. Lisa says, I want my challenge to be doing interesting figure paintings with little to no detail in the faces. I love that. I think that's a great idea. And so what you may want to do is take some photos in crowds and just sort of surreptitiously hold your little iPhone up there and just take some random photos of people in public so that you have some photos to work with. And then just keep them really simple and abstract. You might even want to do them as almost like gesture paintings. So if y'all have ever taken figure drawing, gesture drawings, you're just trying to capture the movement, the action of the figure, not individual details. And you can do that with the paint, and that'd be a great use of 5 days during the challenge. I think that would be a fantastic subject to approach there. So all of those are great ideas. Interiors, still lifes, portraits, figures, does not have to be the landscape. One of my favorite series of works that I've seen, and it actually was a book as well. Now I can't think of the woman's name who did it. She had gotten stuck in her artwork, in her art making. And to get herself out of it again, she committed to doing 30 days of, I think there were drawings of the same simple bowl over and over and over again. And each one is subtly different, and they're exquisitely beautiful. But what she learned by going back to the same exact subject, different lighting, she worked from life, over and over again, were how many changes there were and how many variations there were in that subject, depending on the time of day and the light. A lot of artists have painted or drawn the exact same subject during different times of day and different lighting. Get a lot out of doing that. So keep it as simple as you can. Don't make the process overly complicated. And think about the things that we've talked about that will set you up for success. So first, in choosing your subject, go back to what your why is. What's your big goal for the challenge? What do you want to have accomplished by the end of those 5 days? That'll help be a motivator as you go forward. Then you might want to think about picking a subject or a medium that you haven't worked with before, that you want to experiment with and make a little less precious. Dive into exploring it, knowing it doesn't have to be perfect. Pick subjects that are related. Don't pick 5 different kinds of subjects. Use the same medium all the way through the whole challenge. Don't switch the medium in the middle either. Then think about batching ahead of time. So if you're working from photographs, take those, crop them, get them all ready to go so that all you have to do the day of that painting is pull it up on your computer or on your iPad. Don't make yourself have to work twice as hard. Prep those panels or the canvas or whatever it is that you're going to paint on so that it's ready to go as well, so that as you start to paint, you can just dive right in and flow. Get all of that stuff that you can do ahead of time done. Lastly, think about folding in the Instagram social media component so that you're posting the process of the painting challenge to Instagram, that you have some accountability and some reinforcement, some support from the rest of the membership. Because if we're all on there and we look for that hashtag, we start following that hashtag, then we're going to see each other's work, and you'll be able to comment like and support what each other are doing. Makes a big difference in how much reach you're getting. So any other questions there on the challenge? Make sure I haven't skipped anything or any questions that anybody has. So the way that it's going to work is that we are going to post a prompt every morning of the challenge and a link to the video for that day. So there'll be a prompt and a link to the video for that day, each of those 5 days. And it's probably going to go up, I think we're going to schedule them so they'll go up between 8 and 9 o'clock. So if you're an early bird and want to dive in earlier, you can do that. And as we post that prompt, we will hit the button to notify the membership. So you'll get an email notification if that's set up in your membership profile, as well as the prompt in the group, because I know some people like to get the email. So you can definitely get an email, but we're not going to bombard everybody's email inbox unless they've set it up that way. Does everybody know how to set up notifications so that you can get those prompts every day? Let me know in the chat roll if you do not know how to set up the prompts, because I can walk through that really quickly here, and I think it's probably worth doing just for a second, just to remind everybody where you go to get that done. So if you go into the group and you go to your profile on your personal account, then you go to notifications, and you can decide whether you want to get email notifications or the mobile notifications, both or none. So you just want to go to the personal settings and choose which way you want to get notified. And that way, when we post the prompt, you'll get it in the preferred method of your choice. So if you have any questions about that, let me or Stephanie know by tagging us in the membership. Sally says, do you have a large knife I can borrow this weekend? I do. I'll try to remember to pack one in there, Sally. Because Sally's coming to paint camp. Tracy says, should we post our images in the membership? Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Tracy. I'm so glad you said that. Definitely post it in the membership, because not everybody's going to go over to social media. So when you're ready to post, what I would do is just post in the general discussion. If you post it in the comments underneath, it's liable to get lost over time. But here's how I would do that. The thing I think is really important. So go in here, make your post, put your image in there, pull one up. I'm not going to go through the whole posting thing, but post it. Tell us what your goal is, what you were trying to do, and I would use the hashtag in here too, so that people know that it's part of the challenge. And one other thing I want everybody to commit to doing: don't make people post in silence. I want y'all to go in, and I want you to give each other support. Now, you don't have to critique unless somebody's asked for a critique, but comment on people's work during the challenge, because to post and not get any comments is deflating. And one of the things that is kind of nice is we've got a little protected world here. When we're in the membership and you're posting the paintings for the challenge, it's a safe zone. You know, nobody is going to come beat you up about your painting. So if there's one you're not sure about, this is a good place to post it. This is the place to get feedback on what you might want to do a little bit differently. This is a place to post the wins and the celebration. So I want everybody to post into the membership. Posting on Instagram is an add-on, but you're going to get the most benefit if you post in the membership, and after you post, go comment on 3 other people's paintings. And I'm going to put that into the prompt, because I don't want people to post and not get any feedback. So I think that's super important. Thank you so much for mentioning that, Tracy, because I almost left that out, and that was a really important part of what we're doing. So make sure you respond to each other's posts. I want you to be able to see, and I'd also include which day it is. So put day 1 on there, or day 2, whatever day it is, and that helps to be able to see the progress yourself, never mind anybody else. So thank you, Tracy. Any other questions there? Everybody knows how to set up their notifications now so that you'll get the prompts, and everybody knows to get all prepped and ready. There are a number of sites where you can go to get photos if you want to work from photos and don't want to bother to go take them. But again, I really strongly urge you to take your own. And if you're going to get photos from somebody else, make sure they're from those free photo sites so that you're not violating copyright. Any other questions before we log off? Y'all have been on the entire time. That was fantastic. Tracy says, thanks. I haven't paid in for a couple of weeks, so this is very timely. You've been off on vacation, though, Tracy. Great to jumpstart painting after the summer. Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it, too, and can't wait to see what y'all do. So if you run into any other questions or have questions about the challenge before we get started next week, do let us know. And look for those prompts and links as we move into the beginning of the week. Take care, everybody, and have a fantastic rest of the week. Happy painting, everyone. Again, if you have a question about it, tag me in the membership, and I will be happy to check in there and answer any questions you have. Cool. Glad to see everybody's going to do it. Excellent. Y'all have a good one. Bye-bye for now.